Thank you. And hello, everybody. Great to join you again. We're pleased to be with you again for today's training. But before we do that, we want to begin with some introductions to those of us present today. And so first and foremost, we'd like to acknowledge and introduce the HUD staff who are the leadership staff who are with us on the call. We are joined again by Kimberly Nash, the Director of the Office of Block Grant Assistance, and Corey Schwartz, the Acting Deputy Director of the Office of Block Grant Assistance. Robert C. Peterson, who joined us last time, is unable to attend today, but he is also representing the State and Small Cities Division of the Office of Block Grant Assistance. Next, we'd like to introduce ourselves again, the training team at ICF. You have 3 of us joining you today. My name is Kyle Smith. I am the Senior Manager of Thriving Communities at ICF, and I am joined by my colleagues, Jamie Abbott, our Lead Community Development Specialist, and Scott Ledford, our Senior Director of Community Development. Andalyn Nesbitt Rodriguez, who joined us last time, is unable to join us today, but is here in spirit. So let's go over the learning objectives of this webinar. By the end of this webinar, you will have the ability and skills to initiate your pro-housing grant. This includes understanding grant status updates from HUD, being able to utilize the DRGR system in relation to your grant so that you can manage and log in to the system. To complete the action plan approval process to move toward your first financial drawdown, and to understand the financial requirements and fund distribution. But before we do that, let's break the ice like we did last time with another interactive exercise. So we are going to do another interactive poll to ask you a few questions. So if you could type in menti.com and the code here on the screen, and that code is 72781806, we are going to break the ice with all of you with another question. And we are shifting there now. If you have logged in, please give a little thumbs up. Thank you. All right, so let's start by introducing ourselves again. Please share your name and the agency that you represent joining us today. At Council from Twin Cities, Iowa City, with lots of different attendees coming in. I won't be able to read every one of them. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. It is very impressive, the wide variety of places across the United States in terms of sizes and geographies that are pro-housing grantees. Very impressive that you are all here today working together on your grants. So let's go now to our next question. Let's talk a little bit about the activities that you plan to undertake. This one is more of a poll. Are you using your grant for planning and policy, for development, for infrastructure, or for housing preservation? Lots of planning, lots of development, some preservation and infrastructure. Excellent. There is a pretty wide variety of activities that are eligible uses under the grant. And of course, they're all very innovative. We will be covering all of these different kinds of activities and how you can put them into your action plan, into DRGR, and enter them into the system appropriately. exciting to see all of these different ideas underway. And having dug into some of these, there are a lot of cool activities across all 4 categories. So let's jump into the core content. We'd like to start off by giving you some grant status updates from HUD. Let's start with your grant agreements. They will be sent from your local HUD field office by the end of this month, by the end of August. You are asked to execute the grant agreements as soon as you can, and no later than September 20th. In the meantime, HUD will reach out to each grantee to schedule conversations to align the activities from your original application with the award amount you received. These will be scheduled for September 9th, 11th, and 12th. We mentioned this last time. The action plan that you develop is going to be directly informed by how you align these activities. So after you align the activities with the reduced amount from HUD, that will be reflected in the action plan that you develop. And the action plan you submit in DRGR, which we will talk about today, should also reflect the activities from these discussions. So let's get to DRGR. What is the Disaster Recovery Grant Reporting System, and how can each of you use it to manage your grants? I'm going to mention a little history about DRGR here. DRGR was originally developed by HUD for the CDBG DR program, Disaster Recovery Program, but today it is also used for other HUD programs, like this one, like Pro Housing. It is used for a lot of different reasons, to access grant funds, to report your performance accomplishments on a regular basis, and for HUD staff to review your activities, to review your financials, and to prepare reports to Congress. It is available 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So let's do another poll. The Menti is back. It's the same code, 7278-1806, and we're going to ask you about DRGR. Have you used DRGR before for a HUD grant? Few yeses, a lot of no's, and one unsure. Well, that makes sense because DRGR is not the system for CDBG. It is the system for CDBG DR. And it looks like it's going to be a new content for all of you today. So we will introduce all of you to how to use this system for Pro Housing. And never worry, it appears that most of you are in the same boat. It should be new for all of us. So we're going to get started. The first step is getting access into the system. And this slide is intended to map it out. So access to DRGR is available to authenticated users. To become an authenticated user, a user account request is submitted in the DRGR system by an existing user using the request new user link, and then approved by a HUD administrator in DRGR. Once that happens, the grantee receives a user ID and a temporary password. The grantee administrator certifies the new user and associates the user to the grant. And then after that occurs, the login and password is used to log into the DRGR system for the first time. So it is imperative and it is best practice that you have multiple staff with access to the DRGR system. There are multiple DRGR roles that are assigned to each user. We're going to go over the grantee administrator and the general user now. The first role is the grantee administrator. So the grantee administrator has the ability to certify users, assign users to grants, edit and add action plans, view obligations, drawdowns, and receipts, take action on flags, and view MicroStrategy reports. The general user has the ability to add and edit action plans and APRs, view obligations and drawdowns, and take actions on flags. I think the important thing to note here is that grantees need to have two types of users. One is the user that creates the voucher, and that is the general user. And then the second is the user to approve the voucher, and that's the administrator. So on the previous slide, we discussed the grantee administrator and the general user. This slide goes over the additional roles that the grantee user profile can have. And we're only going to focus on those roles that are not in X. The view only mode, and I'm going to go through these boxes one by one. The view only mode, the first one on the left, enables view only for the user and has no edit privileges. It's suggested that this not be the general user's only role. The next box is the grantee administrator, which we already mentioned. The next role is the ability to request drawdown. In this role, the user can create obligations, create vouchers, revise vouchers, create and edit receipts, and other activity drawdowns. At least one grantee user must be assigned this role. The next role is the approved drawdown. This role can update obligations, approve drawdowns, create receipts, and block project and activity drawdowns. Just like the request drawdown role, at least one other grantee user must be assigned to this role. So again, one user requests the drawdown, another user approves the drawdown. The other roles within DRGR are to submit the action plan, to submit the annual performance report, to make a user profile request, and the others do not apply. Okay, let's conclude with some hints. So first of all, DRGR works best using the Google Chrome browser. Google Chrome 4.7 and later works best. Some other internet browsers that may be used might be Microsoft Edge or Firefox. Regardless of the browser you use, please disable the pop-up blocker feature. Navigate using the DRGR links rather than the internet browser buttons. Do not hit the back button in the internet browser. Save early and save often. DRGR times out after 20 minutes. So it is best for you to regularly save your work. And then finally, to log out, do not close your window. We recommend that you log out of DRGR using the logout link in the My Profile tab, and that you wait until you get the next screen to confirm in DRGR that you are fully logged out before closing the browser. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Jamie to talk about action plan submittal.
Thank you very much, Kyle. All right, so we'll go ahead and dive into action plan submittal. Okay, so here on the screen, I just is the DRGR sign-in screen. This is utilized to display the DRGR system. In order to find the login screen, you can complete a internet search. Once again, as a reminder, the Chrome browser is the best browser to utilize for working within DRGR. So to sign in, you would type in your username. Once again, this is assigned by the HUD IT security staff, and it is provided at the time of approval by HUD. The password, grantee users will receive a temporary password from HUD. Following the initial login, the DRGR system will require users to create a new password. Passwords in the DRGR system must be at least 8 characters long, containing an upper and lowercase letters and at least one number. The system requires users to change their login password every 6 months. Once the username and password are entered into the boxes, select the I agree to Terms of Services radio button. Users cannot access the system until they have agreed to the terms of service, and then click on the Login button. Next on the screen, you will see it is displaying the DRGR home screen. I have, you will see there that over there at number 1, there is a red box encompassing the home area, which includes information on my account, my announcements, and my action items. And then I would like to draw your attention to number 2, which is the bar where you can lock in your grant number, and it is imperative to always make sure that you have the pro housing grant number locked in before toggling to the other menu options. And then number 3 is the in the navigation bar is the 7 modules for the DRGR system. And these modules is how you will navigate around within DRGR. So those modules are the home page, which includes information on the action items, news, and your resources. The administrative module is the next one, and that's for your user management and responsible organizations. Next is the Manage My Grants module. This is the overall grant information, including action plans and activities, your performance reports, and work plans for applicable users. Next is the Manage My Financials module. This will provide access to grant funds and your program income. Beside that is Manage My Compliance module. This will help you manage your flags and report on monitoring, audit, and technical assistant events. And then finally, the last one is Data Analytics module. This will provide you access to the MicroStrategies reports and the public reports. DRGR action plan requirements. So the action plans are created through the Manage My Grants module. And then the draft action plan narrative will be utilized for the draft action plan narratives are developed using the Pro Housing NOVO application. You'll create the DRGR projects and activities based on the HUD application alignment conversation that you'll be having with HUD. Submit the DRGR action plan for HUD review and acceptance in order to draw the funds. Hint, organize all your action plan components into an Excel document or a Word file before you start entering the information into DRGR. Okay. From the home page, you will go to the navigation bar to the Manage My Grants module and locate the action plan menu. Select the action plan. The Add Action Plan page will load. You will review the information and select the Confirm the Grant. Next, on the Manage Action Plan page, which is displayed on the screen here, the summary details about the grant will be displayed at the top of the page. This will show you various information, including but not limited to the grant number, the grantee's name, action plan status, and grant award amount. Functions for the narratives, documents, measures, and projects and history will also be provided as well. This is where the grantee will go in and upload information utilizing the grantee's NOVO application. This slide is depicting the Financials tab, which is shaded in blue. This tab displays the financial information, including the grant funding, the LOCKS authorized amount, grant award, the estimated program income and revolving loan funds, the amounts available to budget, your activity budget, and your activity obligations. In addition, it provides funding sources. This is where additional funding sources is displayed, such as your leveraged funds are added. To add the leveraged funds, to the right of the funding sources table, select the Add Funding Sources. A pop-up will display where the funding source name will be entered. You would select a funding type from the drop-down menu and click Save. The funding source will now be available to report leveraged funding. And then project funding. This also shows where the project number, the project title, project budget, available amount to budget as well. To add estimated program income and revolving loan funds, this is accessible from the top right of the Manage Action page. This will allow grantees to add and/or edit the estimated program income and revolving loan funds. DRGR Action Plan Financials. So the total amount of resources, including your estimated program income and revolving loan amounts, equals the total budget. Determine allocation for the administration and your technical assistance. Remember, grantees, you may use up to 10% of your award for general administration costs and technical assistance. Remainder of the Pro Housing Grant is available to allocate to the HUD approved activities. And if there is no program income anticipated, then an entry is not required. For Pro Housing grants that are anticipating program income funds are receipted into DRGR, which will go into a general account created by the DRGR system. The grantee will have to draw the program income first before drawing program funds. For grants that include a revolving loan program, we'll need to establish at the project level. Within the Manage Action Plan page, select Edit to the right of the grant details. A pop-out titled Edit Estimated Funds will display. This is where the grantees will add or edit the estimated program income revolving loan funds. And then, as previously mentioned, bolded there at the bottom of the screen, is that all grantees must expend the program income before additional drawdowns from the Pro Housing Award. For additional information, you can check it out, the citation at 24 CFR 570.504. Here on the screen, you'll see the hierarchy of the DRGR system. The action plan in DRGR outlines the proposed activities and groups those activities by the project. A grantee establishes the projects within DRGR. The primary purpose of the projects is to group similar activities by categories such as major programs, so like your planning, your housing, and infrastructure activities. The activities will allow the grantees to define and describe the local, on-the-ground, grant-funded projects. In addition, it will demonstrate the activity is eligible per program regulations, demonstrate how the activity will meet a national objective, report the outcomes and accomplishments of the activity, and then draw down the funds from the line of credit control system, which is commonly referred to as LOCKS. Okay, let's talk about some math rules within DRGR. The DRGR system enforces the following budget rules to ensure grantees do not exceed award budget and spending category. So at the action plan level, the sum of all projects budgets must equal to or less than the total grant budget plus estimated program income and revolving loan funds, if any. At the project level, the budget for each project must be less than or equal to the amount available for project budget when added to the DRGR system. And then at the activity level, the budget for each activity must be greater than or equal to the sum of all activity budgets associated with that project. Entering projects into DRGR. To add projects, you would navigate to the Manage My Grants module and locate the project menu. Select Add Projects. The Add Project page will then load and complete at a minimum all the required fields marked with an asterisk. Those fields are displayed on the screen are project number, your project title, project description, project status, and project budget amount. The project number and project title should be unique to each project created. The project description should be detailed enough to know what that project is. The project status should be designated as open because the only other option is canceled. The project amount field must include both grant funds and program income. Note, if you are undertaking a revolving loan fund, the checkbox in the middle of the screen would be marked. Once complete, you would select the Save button at the bottom of the page, and then the Manage Project page will load and display the information that you had just entered. So now we're talking about entering activities into DRGR. To add the activities, you would navigate to the Manage My Grants module and locate the Activities menu. Select Activities. The Add Activities screen will display. Once again, the required fields that are marked with an asterisk are required entry. So project, every activity must be associated with a project. Activity type correlates to the eligible activities as defined in the Pro Housing Program. Environmental assessment, you would provide the status of the environmental review for the activity, and those would be the exempt, the completed, or underway. National objective, all pro housing funds must meet a national objective, including the benefiting low and moderate income persons, preventing or eliminating slums or blight, or selection of urgent need. The grantee program field does not apply. The grantee activity number allows the grantee to enter create a unique numbering system for each of the DRGR activities. You could utilize activity number that can mirror your local billing codes to make the connection there easier. The activity title allows the grantees to create a unique title for each DRGR activity, and then the activity description should be a brief description of the activity. Continuing on, the activity status is a required field, which includes planned, underway, completed, or canceled. Grantees can mark the activity as planned if the grantee is waiting for the completion of the environmental review or a selection of a developer. The project start date indicates when the activity is expected to start. The project end date indicates when the activity is expected to be completed. If the projected end date passes, the grantee must update the projected end date to avoid DRGR flags. Projected end dates also help measure the timely expenditure of funds and applicable expenditures deadlines. Responsible organization. Every DRGR activity must have a single responsible organization assigned. The responsible organization is the entity responsible for carrying out or implementing the activity. The grantee may select itself, for example, as a responsible entity for an activity that is implemented directly, whereas the grantee may select a subrecipient as the responsible organization if a subrecipient is sub-awarded grant funds to implement its own activity directly. Responsible organizations will need to be inputted prior to being able to select them from the drop-down menu. Okay, next is the budget. The activity budget represents the amount of grant funds and program income committed to the DRGR activity. The system prevents grantees drawing funds in excess of the activity budget. In addition to the activity details described in the previous slides, each DRGR activity has several other components that must be completed. After completing and saving the details for an activity, users add the additional components from the Manage Activity page. So the Financials tab, which is also highlighted in blue there, the activity budget provides a summary of financial data and transactions. Activity funding sources allows the grantees to report the leverage sources of funds. Please note that the funding source has to be added to the action plan financial tab first. Then the source and amount can be added to the activity funding source. Activity responsible organizations budget. This is optional. The DRGR system defaults to the assigning the entire activity budget to the selected responsible organization. Grantees may assign a portion of the activity budget to one or more subordinate responsible organizations to report the budgets for partners and other key organizations involved in implementing the activity. Next is the Details tab. This includes the activity description, which should provide a brief description of the activity the grantee is proposing, the activity location, providing a brief description of the location, such as King County, as one example, or may utilize census tracts as well. The Documents tab, this is optional. This allows the grantees to upload documents such as service area maps to support the DRGR activity. These documents are only viewable in the DRGR system. Next is Measures and Environmental tabs, which are going to be described on the following page. Performance measures in DRGR. The benefiting reporting performance. These measures are key to demonstrating compliance with eligible activity type and national objective, such as number of owner households for an owner-occupied housing rehab program, or such as the area benefit, the census, the direct persons, the number of housing units. The proposed accomplishments represents the physical outcomes of the activity. So those examples could be the number of affordable housing, development plans completed, zoning studies completed, the number of land use amendments adopted, and the number of single family units created. And then proposed beneficiaries represent the beneficiaries of the activity. An example would be the number of individuals. Environmental review and DRGR. So as previously mentioned, grantees should select their exempt, completed, or underway based on the status of the environmental review. You would enter your search criteria and hit search to find your hero's environmental review for the activity and select the desired environmental review from the search results. Area benefit geography in DRGR. If you selected the area benefit census as a measure for benefit reporting performance, you will be brought to the geography tab. On this tab, select the applicable LMISD dataset from the drop-down menu. If the activity service area is a city or county-wide, select the box. In most instances, this is not the case. If the activity service area is not a city or county-wide, unselect the box. To add census tracts and block groups, select the county code or county name, followed by the desired census tracts from the available census tracts box, followed by selecting select. Then select every block group in the census tract or unselect the box to select the desired block groups. Select the obtain the low mod percentage, and once the percentage is displayed, select save. All right, that is the end of that section. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. It is now 3:38, and let's come back at 3:43. Thank you. Okay, now it's 3:43. I hope everyone enjoyed their 5-minute break. And we'll get started on to the next section, talking about financial draws. DRGR vouchers. So the vouchers are requests for payments made by the grantee within DRGR. They are the financial transactions that HUD can see and are a measure of progress for timely expenditures. Grantees must have at least 2 DRGR users with drawdown roles. One is to request or create the voucher, and another to approve the voucher. As previously stated, the request drawdown, this role can update obligations, create and revise voucher drawdowns, create and edit receipts, and as previously mentioned, the other user is the approve drawdown. And this role, you can update obligations, approve drawdowns, create and edit receipts, and activity drawdowns. Please note that grantees must keep voucher supporting documentation, including the invoices, expenditures, and a summary of the costs charged to the DRGR activities. After a voucher is created, draw requesters can also revise open vouchers and vouchers that have been approved. Obligations are always done at the activity level within DRGR. An activity obligation must be less than or equal to the amount budgeted. And once the funds are obligated within DRGR, the grantee can then create vouchers as needed to reimburse itself for expenses incurred while paying eligible activity expenses. Grantees cannot create a voucher for an activity that is not yet approved by HUD. Action plan approval is required. All vouchers are created at the activity level. All activities must have a completed environmental review record on file prior to drawing the funds. The activity obligation amount must be sufficient to cover the voucher amount. Additional fiscal controls on vouchers. Payments must minimize the time elapsing between the transfer of funds and disbursement. Payments will be either reimbursements, which is the preferred method, or advances in some cases. So reimbursements will be made within 30 days after receipt of billing, unless it is believed to be improper. Advances may be made in cases where the grantee or subrecipient lacks sufficient working capital upon HUD's approval. Grantees must make timely transfer of any advance funds to subrecipients. Voucher process, selecting an activity. So under the Manage My Financials module, the grantees will select Create a Voucher. A grantee user with the drawdown request role creates the voucher for one or more activities. When the draw request is generated, DRGR will perform a preliminary validation to ensure that enough funds are available. If there is enough funds, DRGR will generate a voucher number. Then a grantee user with a drawdown approval role will review and approve each voucher line item. or you have the ability to approve the entire voucher in itself. If the voucher has multiple line items, the draw approver can approve some line items and reject the others. Once the voucher is approved, the voucher for the grant funds are sent to LOCKSS for processing. DRGR sends the grantee approved line items to LOCKSS each business night or on a future date that the draw approver specified. If approved, LOCKSS sends the line items on to the U.S. Treasury for payment and the status of the request back to DRGR. The drawdown results are reflected in DRGR the next day. If Treasury accepts the payment, the electronic payment is made to the grantee within 3 business days. Otherwise, payments rejected by the Treasury are noted in DRGR, and the grantee must create a new voucher for the rejected line items. Okay, so it's time for another Mentimeter question. So go to your web page. The code is still active. And our next question is, does your organization have access to eLOCKSS? Okay, so we have 6 that are sure that they have access, 5 that says no, 22 that says unsure. And it's completely fine to be unsure about having access to eLOCKSS, but we will make sure to follow up with you about your access to eLOCKSS. With that, I am going to hand the presentation over to my colleague, Kyle Smith.
Thank you, Jamie. So let's now talk about your performance reports, your annual performance report or APR. So as part of your pro-housing grant, you are required to complete an annual performance report or an APR. You'll create the APR through DRGR via the Manage My Grants module within DRGR. Each APR contains information about your funds and your activities, and you'll submit that within DRGR for the applicable calendar or fiscal year. This includes, but is not limited to, the project name, activity, location, and national objective, your funds budgeted, obligated, drawn down, and expended, the funding source and total of any non-pro-housing funds to be expended on each activity, the beginning and actual completion dates of said activities, your performance outcomes against the measures that Jamie mentioned in an earlier slide, as well as the race and ethnicity of those assisted under direct benefit activities. Automatically, after you enter this information, DRGR will display the amount of program income you've received, the amount of program income you've dispersed, and the amount of grant funds you've dispersed. Once you've done that, use DRGR to auto-generate your SF-425. And you will use that to submit your federal financial report. So you must submit an APR through DRGR no later than 30 days after the end of each fiscal year. So as mentioned before, the APR includes information on both the uses of funds and activities. So you'll need both of those sets of information. Within 3 days of submission within DRGR, you must post the APR on your official website, the same place that you have your action plan. And keep in mind that you should make sure that the pro-housing information, including your action plan and your APRs, can be navigable by the public from your homepage. So in addition to this, a couple of other things to keep in mind with regard to public access and participation in your APR. Make sure it's in a form that is accessible to persons with disabilities as well as non-English speakers. And you're encouraged to notify communities and other interested parties of the APR after you submit. So that includes electronic mailings, press releases, statements by public and elected officials, work with neighborhood organizations, et cetera, et cetera. One more thing about the APR, it is a best practice to try and compile this information ahead of time from your subrecipients before you compile it. So one thing that you should take as a hint, work with any other entities ahead of time to get their information for your APR, including activity and financial information. That way you, the grantee, have ample time to compile it and submit it into DRGR on a timely basis. All right, let's talk about amendments to your grant. An amendment is a change to the activities in the action plan. Amendments that require HUD approval are considered substantial amendments. All other amendments are considered non-substantial amendments. And we'll talk about each of those in a second. Regardless of whether you're amending substantially or non-substantially, pro-housing grantees must highlight and propose all of them to HUD within DRGR. They must include content of what is being added, deleted, or changed to the relevant activities. And they must be numbered sequentially and posted to your pro-housing website, the same place as your action plan and your APRs. So substantial amendments are those changes that affect the responses to the rating factors that led to the scoring of your successful grant. So these can include a number of things, and they're not limited to, but may be a change in the program benefit or beneficiaries of your activities, the eligibility criteria, the allocation or reallocation of more than 10% of your award from one activity or another to another, or the addition or the deletion of an activity. When possible, when making amendments, make a non-substantial amendment. These do not require the same approval by HUD, and they do not affect any of these bullets in your grant in the same way. And if you're unsure whether your program changes would be a substantial amendment or would qualify as a non-substantial amendment, please contact HUD to help determine that. It is always best to make a non-substantial amendment. If you do make a substantial amendment, you must follow the public participation requirements in the NOFO before requesting one. So this means that before making the amendment, you must go through a 30-day public comment period on the substantially amended action plan. All of the substantial amendments must follow those allowable costs within the NOFO. So before you make a substantial amendment, please refer back to the FY 2023 NOFO for reference on what is an allowable and non-allowable under the grant. If you make a substantial amendment, they are submitted in DRGR. HUD will evaluate the substantial amendment and respond in writing whether after a substantial amendment, the amended grant would still score in the fundable range. Again, it is always best to submit non-substantial amendments. If you wish to determine whether or not your program change would be substantial or non-substantial, please contact HUD first before opening up the 30-day public participation period and submitting in DRGR. Okay, so we are going to conclude with a brief discussion of timely expenditures of funds. As a pro-housing grantee, you are expected to draw down your grant on a timely basis. You must expend funds in a manner that meets all of the pro-housing program requirements in the NOFO by the end of federal fiscal year 2029. Any unexpended funds in a grantee's account will cancel on September 30th, 2031. So please do keep these requirements in mind, expend your grant on a timely basis, and remember the deadlines up here on this slide. Finally, we recognize we've gone over a lot with you so far in this webinar. And so before going into some Q&A and, and in conclusion, we want to provide you with a couple of resources that we think will be very handy for you. So first of all, we've covered a lot with DRGR. There is a user manual and there is a quick guide. The link to the user manual is up here on this screen. Refer to it. It will be your friend. And many of the topics that we cover are directly mentioned in the user manual. So please, if you are confused, you can refer to this webinar. You can also refer to the user manual. Additionally, and I'm thinking back to the mentee, many of us are unsure about our ELOCS access. If you are looking for a resource on ELOCS for your organization, please see this link also on HUD.gov for access to ELOCS. And it will help you with what you need to know regarding ELOCS. All right. We are going to finally conclude with a question for you all. There's been a lot this webinar. There's been a lot last webinar. We want to know where you need technical assistance. So if you could give some thought as to what other TA topics would be beneficial to your agency as you initiate and undertake your pro-housing activities, this group would love to hear it. The mentee again is mentee.com 72781806. Send the slides. A recording and copy of the slides will be on HUD Exchange after the webinar. How to leverage funds. There's a lot of different things here, translating the NOFO to DRGR, additional onboarding with DRGR. I see some things about partnerships and subrecipients, acknowledging that many of the grantees here do have other entities that they are working with. Request for additional technical assistance after the action plan submission. When can we start work? HUD Exchange DRGR location. A few of these items I would encourage us to look at the slides and the resources. Hopefully we have covered that within the training, but if we have not, we can certainly cover that within the Q&A. Maybe we give this just a second longer because there have been fewer responses as compared to the previous mentees. We have had covered a lot in an hour, so it would be understandable, but we want to make sure we capture anything else on anyone's mind. I don't see anything else coming in, but it is good to know that we have all of these questions as we're getting started. So now we wanted to move to question and answer. And my understanding is that Scott, our colleagues Scott and Jamie and I will all come up on video and we will begin to facilitate some question and answer.
Scott, you're
Thank you. That thing that always happens. Thanks, Kyle. We have had some questions come in on the Q&A box, so we'll tackle those first. I do encourage folks in the audience that there's actually plenty of time right now for Q&A, so encourage you to continue to drop questions into that Q&A box. I think I'll just start with them generally in the order that they've come in. I do feel like some of them have already been addressed, but then it should be a fairly quick answer. Jamie, Kyle, if you can tackle it, great. If we need to call upon our friends at HUD to provide any clarifications, we can certainly do that as well. So starting with one of the first, what if there is not an existing user within our organization for DRGR? This was during the DRGR portion of the presentation.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one. So within Chapter 5 of the DRGR manual, it has a step-by-step instructions for submitting a request and general information on managing users. For new grantees, HUD will follow up with additional instructions for requesting DRGR access to their pro-housing grant, including requesting information for HUD to set up an initial user.
Great. And some of these will connect with each other. So, you know, the next question was, none of our team has access to DRGR. What does quote unquote grantee user with user profile mean?
Yeah, so users with the grantee user with user profile, it means that this role can request another or other grantee users and further identify those grantees user roles, such that were covered on the screen, you know, such as like the drawdown roles that were previously discussed, among some other roles that can be assigned as well.
Okay, what is the link to request a DRGR account?
Okay, so for existing users, please log into DRGR and navigate to the administration menu and then select Request New Users screen. For new grantees, HUD will provide instructions for requesting the initial grantee user.
And when can we expect this grant, this pro housing grant, to appear in our DRGR profile? So this is obviously an entity that already has DRGR. When is this grant going to show up for them?
Yeah, great question. So for existing grantee administrators, you will see your pro housing grant in the next day or so. But email Colin Cross if you don't see it by Tuesday, September 3rd.
So if you don't see it after you enjoy your Labor Day weekend, contact Colin. When do we sign up and how long does it take to get a DRGR account?
Yeah, so it may take up to 10 business days. So as soon as you receive the instructions, please provide the requested information as soon as possible so HUD may begin the process.
Okay, a lot of DRGR fun there. So this one I think goes a little bit more into when you're in DRGR. And this person is trying to make sure they understand the hierarchy and breakdown between projects and activities. So one of their proposed pro-housing activities involves construction of new affordable housing. Can they set this up as a singular activity, or do we need to create individual address level activities for each home constructed via the program?
That is a very good question. So your project level, just as a reminder, the grantee establishes the projects within DRGR, and the primary purpose of the projects is to group the similar activities by categories, such as, the construction of new affordable housing. And then your activity, you may want to have individual activities, maybe per location, whether it's within a census block track or within a city or county, depending on how your construction of your new housing construction is going to be undertaken. So it really depends on a case-by-case situation, but I would probably go with or suggest going with location area as for individual activities.
It sounds like another option might also be to create the DRDR project as something that's like construction.
Uh-huh.
And then this specific type of new affordable housing construction could be the activity. And, as Jamie said, there's some interpretation to be had here. So anyone from HUD want to chime in here? Otherwise, I would say it'd be really good to talk to your HUD contact about how to best set this up. Anybody from HUD on the line want to chime in now?
Hi, this is Kim. I think you've done a good job of explaining it. I dropped a comment into the chat. Just using the example that you provided, like new construction alone is too broad to be activity level reporting. So we'd want to see, further designation grouped by, project site is, typically a good way to distinguish between, site activity. There might be multiple projects at a site, multiple addresses at a site activity that would be appropriate for activity level reporting, by way of example, if that's helpful to you. But we don't want to see broad categories for purposes of activity level reporting. There needs to be enough specificity and degree of specificity that when we need to focus in, because remember, you've got to do year-end reporting on outcomes and the like, and so we have to have enough specificity to determine that progress is being made with regard to the specific activities that you're carrying out.
Great, thanks, Kim.
Yeah, and Aaron's the DRGR expert, so Aaron, if you want to dive in further, please do.
Yeah, I think that was a good summary. I think just like always, if there are specific questions related to what you all are doing, I would suggest just emailing a question so that we can address those specifically.
Thanks, Aaron. Jump into the next question. Are there any public participation or public comment period requirements associated with the APR?
I would be happy to cover this question. There is not a public comment period for the APR like the public comment period that grantees undertook to submit their proposal or will need to undertake if they have a substantial amendment. However, you are required to post your APR to your organizational website after it is submitted to DRGR, and that website should be publicly accessible from your homepage and accessible to those persons with disabilities. Additionally, it's not required, but you are definitely encouraged to circulate the APR to various outlets, newsletters, elected and appointed officials, and community groups to share progress on your grant as you share that progress with HUD.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. All right. Next question is, can you expand on activities that are or are not included in the admin, the 10% admin? The second part of the question is program delivery part of admin or is it separate?
I think I answered that in the chat already. It's separate. So, costs associated directly with carrying out the activity, like staff and overhead costs directly related to the activity, carrying out the activity, are considered to be activity or program delivery cost. Typically, at HUD, we talk about ADC, activity delivery cost. And so I've dropped some applicable definitions in if you want to get more detail, because remember, we're built on the CDBG chassis. So 57206 walks you through program administrative costs that are generally eligible in connection with the program.
Great. Thanks, Kim. And circling back to the annual performance report, is the first one due this October?
So I will attempt to answer this, and my colleagues, please join in. It is expected that the annual performance report will not be due this October, as each APR, or annual performance reporting, is based on the uses of funds and activities identified within the DRGR system. And since at this moment in time, the action plan and activities have not been essentially inputted into DRGR.
Yeah, and this is Kim. I agree with that. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
I was happy to jump in as well. We hadn't had that question before, so I actually had to think about that for a second. I did want to flag that we have different reporting requirements for these grants than we do for FY24. There is quarterly reporting that's required for the FY24 Pro grantee and awards. So we're thinking how best to align that moving forward. But just want to let you know that it may depend on the NOFO year for grantees that are reapplying for 24. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is who the best contact is for questions on everything covered in this webinar. It's shocking that more questions might come up. So we do have on the closing slide your contact at HUD that you should direct things to. Aaron, Kim, anybody have anything they want to add to that? Or it's going to be Colin Cross, and we'll provide his email address there at the end. Maybe Colin, you want to say if there's anyone else.
I can just jump in to say hello. Greetings, everybody. I wasn't around for last week's webinar, but I am the Pro Housing Liaison for the 23 awardees, and it's nice to finally meet everybody. I think probably the best course of action is to bring your questions to me. Aaron is our DRGR expert, but there's going to be plenty that I can answer, and if not, we can obviously work internally together and get you an answer. So Kim, if you agree, I'd say just bring questions to me on this matter and all others.
I agree. And I also just wanted to jump on screen to say hello and thanks to everyone. I didn't intend to be antisocial. I'm just doing something else as well while we're talking about this. And they say that there are more introverts in government than there are normally. So I probably fall into that introversion category. I think I'm borderline, but I did just want to say we're super excited about getting started on the Pro Awards, and we thank you all so much for your patience in terms of the rollout, and we thank our TA providers for this wonderful session.
Thanks, Kim. Great to see you.
You too.
We have had another question come in. I'm going to try to interpret this one. think I know what they're trying to ask. Will we be required to include narrative or financial information about the pro-housing grant activities in our consolidated plan, annual action plan, or CAPER documents? I'm interpreting that as meaning related to their other CPD programs.
Can you repeat that question one more time? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
Yeah.
last part.
Will grantees be required to include narrative or financial information about the pro-housing grant activities in their consolidated plan, annual action plan, or CAPER documents? And I'm adding the portion that I think they're talking about, their regular CPD program on plan, action plan.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's actually separate reporting requirements and processes. So pro housing is not a part of your regular consolidated planning process. There is, however, a section of your con plan. We were actually just doing a training this morning on the con plan process for the Department of Transportation. So we did just want to flag that you do have a section in the con plan that requires addressing removing barriers to affordable housing. So that is a great time to, amplify and make those connections in terms of your con plan, in terms of what you're doing. But it is a separate reporting process and mechanism. So you don't have to do all things pro in connection with your consolidated planning process, except for the provision that I provided with regard to removing barriers. And it may be, something that's worth discussing in your needs analysis section as well, to the extent that you have, identified a need around, creating more affordable housing, and you're using your pro money to do that. But the purpose of the con plan is really to discuss the needs, the market analysis, and other factors, and then move into a discussion of how you're going to program your CDBG, home, ESG, HOPWA funds and such for the purposes of, of addressing the needs that you've identified. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks again, Kim. Looks like the question queue has slowed down. I'll give it another moment just to see if anybody wants to add anything at the last minute here. I'm not seeing anything trickle through. So maybe we will move on. And as promised, Colin's email address is down at the bottom of this slide. You can also go to the website indicated here for some additional information and resources. And as has been mentioned several times at this point, this webinar recording, slides, etc., will be posted on the HUD Exchange after we go through the 5-way compliance process to get them posted there. So with that, we want to thank you for attending. Thank all of our HUD friends for joining us on this, and big thanks to Jamie and Kyle for hearing us through some detailed stuff. So hopefully you'll find these resources useful and you'll come back and check them out in the future as well. Thanks, everybody.